Good morning, everyone. My name is Masika Edwards. I'm with Louisa Code Enforcement. This is Mary Grantham. She's with Admin Support Services for Louisa Code Enforcement. And we are excited today to present our process for the demo processing. It starts with code enforcement, the permitting process, code enforcement, demolition, permitting process. And I have my contact. We also had cards on the table. I'm not sure if everyone was able to receive a card. Okay. The process of commercial and/or residential permitting starts with Mecklenburg County Land Use Environmental Services Code Enforcement. We have a packet, and we're going to show you in the slides, the upcoming slides, of what we actually require for each form when you submit it. Our address here is 2145 Suttle Avenue, Charlotte, North Carolina 28208. The packet is required that contains the necessary forms when applying for a move-off, partial demolition, or total demolition. Commercial and/or residential packet can be obtained by visiting our website. I'm not sure if you have visited our website at www.mecpermit.com. And on our homepage, you click on Contractors. You click on Forms on the Contractor toolbox. And the available packets are available for you. We have commercial and residential, and I will cover the contents of the commercial demolition packet. I see some familiar faces out here. Okay. Our packet, it starts with the checklist, and we have listed a move-off, partial, and total demolition. We ask for the site address, so where you're tearing the property down, or partial demo or move-off, contact name, contact number. If you're conducting demolition in one of our towns, Cornelius, Davidson, Huntersville, Matthews, Mint Hill, or Pineville, we ask for you to submit the packet still to our office here, or you can mail it into our office and attention to one of us, myself or Mary, and contact the town after you submit the packet, if it's within Cornelius, Davidson, Huntersville, Matthews, Mint Hill, or Pineville. If you're conducting a demolition, move off, or partial demo, and we use demo short for demolition, the City of Charlotte, we ask that you obtain zoning where they actually pull up the address and they zone off, they provide a code on the building permit application, and they are located in our department as well on the first floor. So we ask for you to obtain approval, prior to submitting the packet to Commercial Technical Assistance Center and CTAC, and they're located on our first floor. We have a checklist here. We ask that these forms will be submitted with our packet, and we're going to go through those individually. Address verification form, that is required to show that it is a valid address where you're demoing the property. The primary reason for the address verification form is to correctly identify the address where the work is being performed. And in our slides, we're going to show how to obtain that from our website, from mecpermit.com. This is a familiar brochure that Lexington showed earlier, and it shows some tidbits about asbestos and complying with asbestos NESHAP that was shown previously. This is our erosion control statement for the City of Charlotte as well as Mecklenburg County. We have contact numbers for Mecklenburg County, and the City of Charlotte. Is very important to contact them when the aggregate of disturbance of a parcel or tract is equal or exceeds to 1 acre. A grading permit must be obtained prior to any work on the site, including demolition. Failure to obtain a grading permit prior to such activity is subject to a civil penalty in the amount of $5,000 for grading without a permit. So it's very important to contact. We have the two contacts here for Mecklenburg County. We have Jason Klingler and Jay Wilson for the City of Charlotte, and the contact number. And we ask for you to sign, date, print your name and your company name. Air Quality provided us a notification, demolition, and a renovation instruction form to help complete the NESHAP notification form. And they will expound on that later in the presentation. It's actually 6 pages, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to scroll down. Air Quality also provide an example of the notification form. It shows a sample of the form completely filled out. When we receive the packet in our office for commercial, we add air quality as a review as well as environmental health as a review. And with residential,
Yeah, only if you answer yes to any of the questions on the questionnaire is the NESHAP form required that we would add air quality as the reviewer.
and this is a form, the fillable form for NESHAP notification. On the form, we do look on our department for, of course, the address. We ask for the start date, and of course, sign and date, and the asbestos contractor. One notification per structure must be completed, and we will go into full detail as far as the structures on the commercial and the residential property, how many building permit applications are required as well, and vector form for environmental health. This is a copy of our building permit application for our office. We ask for the address. We ask for you to complete it as possibly as you can, but we will seek out the project description. Here is where you will list move off, commercial demolition, or partial demolition. The square footage. If it's a partial demolition, you include the area of work that you're actually conducting the demolition, total, as well as the move off. The contractor, we ask that you list the demolition contractor as well as the cost. And sign, date, and print your name. This is a copy of environmental health form for Vector. They have a separate form for demolition as well as partial demolition and move off. You list the square footage here and all your information that's applicable down at the bottom. And this is a copy of the move off application. And that completes the packet for the commercial demolition. Okay, I hand it over to Ms. Mary. Excuse me.
For residential demolition, it's pretty much similar to the commercial. Most of the forms are the same. Again, this is the cover sheet. You would either mark it be a move-off, a partial, or a total demolition with the site address, contact name, and number. And again, the same process follows. We ask that you contact the necessary towns if you're doing it in any of these towns. This is just a checklist of what all is required in the packet. Now, again, this is the address verification process where you would go to our website and verify the address of where the demolition or move-off is taking place. Some of this is probably redundant. You saw it in commercial, but ours is pretty much similar. This is the questionnaire we use regarding the demolition or move-off. This is the one I spoke about earlier. If you happen to answer yes to any of these questions on this questionnaire, then a NESHAP application form is required for each structure. We have the brochure, which we've seen a couple times, so I'll get through that. A grading permit as well would be required. Sign, date, print, put your company name. And that's instructions on how to fill out the NESHAP form if it's required. Again, a sample of the form. This is in our packet as well. There's the actual form that you'd be completing if you answered yes to any of those questions. Again, a building permit application is required, and it's required for each structure that you're demolishing on that particular address. Fill out the same information as much as you can, the type of work. It's necessary to indicate the square footage in the project description. Put what you're actually doing. Is it a total demo, partial, or move off? List the contractor information, who's doing the demolition, and the contract cost. Sign, date, and print as well. And this is the health department vector form that you would indicate demolition, partial, and the number of structures based on the square footage. Complete that form. And this is the one for a move off. That takes care of the residential portion. And in order to obtain that address verification form that we were speaking about, you would go to our website at mecpermit.com, and under contractors, and under the contractors toolbox, under the plan review and permitting, which is close to the bottom of the screen when you get to that, you'll click on address verification. And that'll take you to an actual website where you would put in the actual address, it would verify it, and there's a form that would be printed once that address verification takes place that you would include with the packet. Okay. So now we'll move on to maybe any frequently asked questions. Did you have a question? I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Each structure that's detached, a structure, for example, like if you have a house with a detached garage that may also have a shed, that would be 3. They're all, because they're detached. They're all on the same property, but they're detached, so that would be 3. Yes, sir. Anything that's not attached. If you have a house with an attached garage, that's considered 1. But anything that's detached, then you would need 1 for each structure on that property. I had one just last week that had 4.
So we actually have a microphone, so next time somebody has a question, I'll run it over to you, so make sure everybody hears and that we can capture the information. So he was just asking whether you need all the paperwork for each individual structure, and that's what Mary was answering. Now, I will say for NESHAP purposes, we do not consider, if it's just an accessory structure, we don't consider that it making it more than 1 structure and subject to NESHAP. So if it's like a single-family home that has a detached garage, we wouldn't add those together and say, oh, now you have 2 structures, you're subject to NESHAP. We would still just consider that an accessory structure to the primary for NESHAP purposes.
NESHAP purposes, would there need to be a separate inspection for the separate structures, or could I do this?
You could have 1 inspection. Yeah, as long as, I mean, you can have 1 inspection report for 17 structures, and it doesn't matter to us, as long as all the structures are addressed.
Yes, sir.
Knocking down a residential structure project, say apartment building, is that a
If you're residential, if it's a home, residential home, you're demolishing.
heard that described differently in the past? If project is a commercial project and you're for us it's municipal, but by the project. If you're building an apartment building and you're knocking down
You know?
Are you saying,
houses.
I'm sorry, are you saying if it's a residential, like a single-family home, and you're
Yeah,
demolishing
let's
that
say
and
you
you're going to
buy
rebuild it?
two single-family homes next to each other and need to knock them down to build an apartment building.
Then it would be residential, because the land records is deeming the property as residential, because you actually have to conduct a change of use before you build the commercial property.
Okay?
Now, that would be subject to NESHAP, because if you're, so even if it's one house or two houses, but if you're knocking them down to build a commercial project, it would become subject to NESHAP because of the future project use, the future planned use. So it would be subject to NESHAP, but it would still be a residential demolition permit. Even if the change of use has already been filed, I believe, is that?
It'll
As
still
a
be
residential.
demolished, it'll still be demolished as residential, yes.
Because I know as far as our purposes, if that structure has never been used for commercial purposes, if its use was a residence, then it's still considered residential.
The minimum square footage of the building that we have to do permit for demolition.
We have a permit fee schedule in our frequently asked questions, and we will get to that. There's no minimum square footage for commercial or residential.
Yeah, let's say, okay, we have a building, garage, and a tiny shed that it's, let's say, 200 square foot, like me. I have to do permit for that
All
shed.
three.
Yes. Separate building permit applications, separate NESHAP notifications. With environmental health, it's just one vector form per address. Environmental health doesn't require separate vector forms per structure. It's just one per address.
There is something, now, for NESHAP purposes, again, a structure is always a structure. The only exemption from that is if it's not powered, then, if it's, assumption is that might be like a doghouse or something. If there is no power that is run to the structure, then it can be exempt from NESHAP requirements, but you would still need the demolition permit.
The house age, is that, I know that's a determining factor when it concerns asbestos. Is there an age of the home that is considered?
It's not the age of the home, no.
No, because technically asbestos has still not been banned, then that's why it's still, you still have to do the NESHAP notification and the survey, even if it's a recently built structure. We do not typically see asbestos in newer structures, but, and it's not made in the U.S., but it is still made in some other countries. So if you shipped in building materials from somewhere else, it's still possible that a newer structure could be built with asbestos-containing materials. So it's still a requirement for NESHAP, regardless of the age. I believe that OSHA has kind of a cutoff. If it was built after a certain date, then there's different, I don't even want to try to speak to it. There are different OSHA requirements, but for NESHAP, the age doesn't matter.
Okay, anyone else? All right, so we just thought of a few maybe frequently asked questions that might come up. Of course, Lexon already discussed what NESHAP stands for, the National Emissions Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants. Another question might be, how can you submit the commercial and/or residential demolition packet? Currently, there's two ways. You can send it via postal mail to our address here at Settle Avenue, to the attention of Masika if it's commercial, or myself if it's residential. Or you can hand deliver it to our office here down on the first floor and speak to a staff member in commercial technical assistance for commercial property, or residential technical assistance for residential. We are currently working on an electronic submittal process for both commercial and residential, and we'll announce that in the new process once it's completed. Commercial property, if we have several structures at one address, how do we apply for a demolition permit? I think as Masika spoke, one commercial packet can be completed, which is one health department vector form, separate building permit application for each structure, and a NESHAP notification form for each structure. And of course, on the building permit application, list the square footage of each structure for the total demolition, and if it's a partial, list the square footage of just the area itself that's being demolished. And for residential, if you have several structures at one address, how do you apply for a demolition permit? You would submit one residential demo packet to be completed, separate building permit application for each structure, and again, if you answer yes to any of the questions on the questionnaire, then you need to have a separate NESHAP form for each structure. And on the building permit application, of course, list the square footage. What is the turnaround time for commercial and/or residential demolition permits? On average, the target turnaround once is 24 hours once all the agencies have given their approval: air quality, environmental health, zoning, so forth. The next one, what is the turnaround time for air quality approval? You submit the NESHAP notification form 10 working days before the start of a demolition and/or regulated removal. Air quality must have time to review the notification, collect additional information before any regulated work can start. Processing time can depend on if the notification complies with asbestos NESHAP requirements when it's received. On average, an approval email is issued by air quality within 7 days once the notification is complete. Turnaround time for environmental health. The target turnaround time is 7 days. Once the applications are received, their staff will contact the applicant within 3 days to schedule an inspection. Environmental health staff member is required to have access to the interior. Therefore, the contractor is required to meet the inspector on site. The next one talks about the demolition fees and how they're charged. Here's the size based on the square footage per structure. It outlines what the permit fees would be. And these fees are charged to the contractor's bond account. How can a contractor establish a bond account with Mecklenburg County? They can contact our Revenue Collections Department located on the first floor downstairs, and they can set you up a bond account, and they manage all the bond accounts.
Bond be required for
It's
demo?
always required.
You say when or why? Excuse me. When, excuse me, when you apply for the permit, you list a contractor on the application. You can apply for it before you complete the application. It's required to charge the fees, because we use the contractor's account number to charge the fees, and Revenue Collections establishes the bonded account. You could do a bonded. Now, we have Revenue Collections. I'm unfamiliar with that process. We could provide you their contact number, and they can explain. It could either be a bonded account or a cash account, bonded or cash account, and, I'm sorry.
Anyone who issued a permit in Mecklenburg County gives a bond. The exception would be homeowners who are doing work on their own home. But that's a separate conversation. If there's a permit issued, you're going to have one.
Once the demolition permit is issued and the structure is down, what do I do next? You should contact Documents and Inspections here at Code Enforcement to schedule a final inspection, and there's a contact number for them. It is important, in order to get your permit closed out, that you schedule this final inspection. Otherwise, it'll sit there and expire.
We have some contact names and numbers for the agencies that are included in the demolition review. Who shall I contact in environmental health regarding demolition? And we have Tim Dutcher. He's environmental health supervisor. We have his contact number as well as his email. Zaneb York, she's administrative support supervisor with environmental health. Who shall I contact in air quality regarding demolition? We have Danielle Jones, the senior air quality specialist. Who shall I contact in the towns once my commercial and/or residential permit is submitted to Mecklenburg County Louisa Code Enforcement? We have the contacts for each town that you can contact once you submit your commercial and/or residential packet. So it's for the towns. Once again, to reiterate, for the City of Charlotte, we ask for you to have City of Charlotte zoning to approve your packet before you submit it to CTAC or and/or RTAC, and they located on the first floor here in this building. I think that's our final FAQs. Are there any additional questions you may have for us? Thank you.